start today. So, tēnā koutou te Māori o ra ingamana, e ra reo, e ra iwi. E raurangi tirama, tēnā koutou, ko kini toi taku ingoa. Welcome so much for our second or our March monthly webinar hosted by the New Zealand Geothermal Association. So also welcome to our members and also welcome to our Icelandic and international colleagues here. So we started this monthly webinar since February, so last month. And the topic is to basically hand over the mic to our members to share the story around geothermal. So I'm really excited to have Ben here today. So the format of today is that we will shortly receive presentation from Ben, and then he will talk about Western Energy, some of the projects, some of the new areas that the company pursuing will do. And then we'll give Ben 3 questions, myself, then learn about more about him. During that time, please type your questions in the chat box. We will then facilitate the Q&A and then close the session. So overall, aiming to finish at about 10 past or 15 past 1. So without further ado, so thank you, Ben. Thank you. And it was really nice to catch up with you a couple of times during my interactions with you. And I know that Western Energy has been very, very successful and also very busy during this time. So hand over to you so that allowing the participants here today to learn more about the company and also your work.
Thanks, Kenny. Kia ora koto, everyone. Thanks for having Western here to do the monthly webinar. I'll just share my screen here. I've got some slides to go through, but it's very informal. If you have any questions, just let me know, or you can put them in the chat box and I'll see them and I can respond to them. So I guess to get started, if I'm talking too fast or if you can't see the slides, just put it in the chat box there and I'll see that and talk slower. I'm based in Australia at the moment, so I'm based on the Gold Coast. I know my accent's a little strong, so if people don't understand me, then just make a comment there. So thanks for having me. The agenda for today, I want to talk about 3 things. I've got too much to talk about, and those that know me well know that I talk too much. So we'll see where we get to in the time available. So the 3 things I wanted to cover are who are Western Energy, what we do, what our staffing capacity looks like, the history of the company, and our mission. I want to talk a bit about asset management. Now, a lot of the services Western provides fall under asset management. It's not, when you think of a well services company, you don't typically think of them managing their clients' assets. And that's something we've found more and more interest in, especially in the last 12 months. And then finally, I wanted to talk about scale removal. I see some of the people on the call have probably heard this before. Contact Energy and Western Energy have a very strong partnership in pioneering new techniques in scale removal in live wells, live geothermal wells, sorry. And I want to talk about that because it's really one of the success stories of our business. So to get started, Western Energy started in 2005. The 2 founders of the company, Paul and Dane. So I'm just starting a little timer here so I don't talk too much. The founders, Paul and Dane, they were working in Taranaki in the oil and gas industry, and they did have to come to Taupo to do different well services. And what they found there was that some of the clients were really crying out for more support, and they saw that as an opportunity and decided to invest in some equipment and provide some geothermal focused well services. And that's really where the core values of Western Energy started, this customer focused business and innovation and problem solving. So they started off doing some initial works, you can see in the slide there, on capillary tubing, with a Y-line unit doing logging activities. And as they engaged with customers, they found more and more requests for different services. So as we progressed more towards 2010, they started doing scale broaching. So that's where you deploy tools on the Y line or the slick line to remove scale from wells. We did some production testing. So that's when they've drilled new wells and they want to measure reservoir parameters and test the production capacity of wells. And then later on, things would come out of that data analysis and the data that they got from those wireline and slickline activities that would, I guess, for the operators, it would say, well, now we need to do a workover. And Western Energy invested in a coiled tubing unit. So for those not familiar with the coiled tubing unit, the easiest way I think to describe it is it's in the name. So it's tubing that's coiled on a drum, and that allows it to be deployed in and out of a well with relative ease. It's not like a drilling rig where you need to connect those pieces of pipe together. And that has some different advantages, which I'll talk about later. And then coming along with that coiled tubing unit is their sort of pumping division that Western started. So then they started getting into well abandonments, well cementing, and a whole range of other activities because of the equipment that they'd bought. And that progressed for a while in that typical operator service company relationship. Operator needs services, service company has equipment, and it carried on like that. But as clients began to focus more on their value-adding activities like drilling new wells and installing new power stations, they found that they had less and less time to be organising and managing the maintenance and monitoring of their wells. And so they started reaching out to Western for capacity to do that, to provide project management, to provide engineers to write programs, to analyse data and present them risk assessments and analysis, so they could still make decisions about their wells, but so they didn't have to do that groundwork. And so this is kind of where I'm moving to. This, like you can see here, there's not much in the left of the screen, but I haven't added the last 2 years, which would be even more work than what you see on the right. And that's because our team's grown quite a bit. So I've just included a snapshot of Western's business at the moment. And I guess starting on the left, we've kind of got our service departments there. We've got a wireline division, and I'll talk about exactly what they do shortly. We've got one that we call well services, and that's specifically kind of like what Neil asked me about earlier. That's our tracer flow testing and well sampling, and a new service that we're offering called wellhead asset maintenance. And that's part of that well services department. And then we've got the intervention team. So that's using the coiled tubing unit that I spoke about, also doing production testing. Now you'll notice in the middle, there's this technical services team, and this is the engineering capability that Western now has. And our team's grown from, I mean, in 2019, we had one project engineer, and now we have 7. And that just shows the demand for clients in helping to do the groundwork to manage their activities. And if we could have another 2 or 3 project engineers, we would. So if there's anyone listening that's looking for an exciting career in geothermal well services, I encourage you to get in touch with us because we've found the more capability we provide in project management, the more work seems to come through the door. And then supported by this on the right, you can see our great support team with a safety lead and people and capability manager, our commercial team. And then just this year, actually, Western's always had interest from companies internationally for some of the pioneering work we've done in innovation, particularly to do with scale cleaning. And we just hired an international business development manager this year. So we're starting to branch out a bit more into international works. So I guess to summarize, these are the key services Western deliver in New Zealand. So the top one there, well optimization and intervention, that's coiled tubing. But in a nutshell, that's mostly well abandonments and scale removal. And then you've got wireline services, that's logging services, slick line, other well maintenance to do with wireline and slickline services, and also tubing, anti-scalant tubing, chemical injection tubing. The third one there says LECM, but essentially that's well production testing. The bottom one, reservoir services, is this sampling and tracer flow testing, and there's sort of a picture of our equipment there in the lower right. And then the one I'm really focusing on a lot today is the project engineering consultancy, because we're finding at the moment that's really driving demand for all the other services. So jumping into asset management, this is the first sort of main topic of today. And what we've found recently that I mean, traditionally, Western was delivering these services, getting temperature data, pressure data, abandoning wells, and we're involved in just the conveyance and delivery side. But being able to work for multiple operators means we get exposure to all sorts of different well conditions. And clients are finding more and more that having insight into how to manage their assets and make those decisions is something they really want to make those decisions, but having time to put all that data together in a meaningful risk-based way has been difficult. So I'm going to talk a bit about some of the services Western has that contribute to asset management. So firstly, I want to talk about well access. So when you have your own well, understanding what's inside the well is very important. So on the left, I've got, I guess, traditionally the way customers would assess the well access. You know, if you can't get to the bottom of your well, then there's possibly something you need to address. So there's this sort of equipment there that you can see says a gauge ring. Some people would refer to it as a go devil. And you run this equipment with different sizes into the well so that you can see how far it goes. If, for example, you can see there on the top it says diameter. So if you run that 8-inch diameter tool, it gets down to kind of 180 meters and stops. And then you run the smaller one. So you can see in that diagram, if you follow the number 6 down to the bottom, it also has finished there at about 170 meters. And then the smaller size goes a bit further. And this is okay. It gives you an idea of what obstructions might be in your wellbore, but you don't know what's below that. So what Western has done recently is we've implemented what we call a high temperature XY caliper, and it has retractable arms that actually bypass those obstructions and generate, like you can see on the right, generates a map of the obstructions in the well. Now, this isn't, don't want to say this is a new technology. There's technology out there for high temperature wells with multi-finger calipers, and we've found clients, because of cost reasons, have sort of not decided to do that. They've preferred to use the go devils and infer what they can from that. But this high temperature XY tool, although it's not a 60-finger caliper, it is high temperature rated up to 325 degrees C for, I think, 4 to 6 hours. And in terms of price, it's in between something like a multi-finger caliper and your go devils. It also has a temperature measurement, so it's really value adding. A day of a wireline crew at the well site, you're actually getting a full bore profile. So what does that mean for asset management? It means you have a better understanding of the obstructions in your wellbore. If you've got a well that you know develops scale, you're able to watch that scale develop over time and see where it's growing and how deep and where is it in relation to your feed zones. The next one I want to talk about, and I believe the author of the pictures on the left is actually on the call, which is pretty cool. This is one of the newest services Western's delivering this year in wellhead asset management. So coming back to what I said, that I guess in New Zealand we have a code for how we monitor and manage the safety of our wells. That's New Zealand Standard 2403, and it has some broad recommendations about how operators should monitor and maintain their wells, how it should be risk-based. And we found clients in New Zealand have been interested in, I guess, moving their monitoring and maintenance plans away from something that's more reactive to something that's more proactive. And I guess I've got the images on the left there to show you. And I mean, if you go to this paper and read it, it's really amazing the repairs that they've done to these wells and engineered solutions they have to repair some of the corrosion on wells, particularly this like near surface corrosion. But what our clients have sort of expressed to us is they'd really like to be able to see these things happening or get evidence of that corrosion's happening before it gets to the point that they need to do a repair like that. So, and that aligns with some of recent literature, but I used the paper there on the right that sort of talks about well integrity management plans and how if that's, if the approach to well integrity management is different, you can actually reduce the frequency of failure and extend the life of the wells. And we know, like in a competitive energy environment, using those geothermal assets for longer and ensuring that less repairs, less expensive repairs are done over time is key to making those assets last. So how's Western involved with this? Just last month, we started sending crews out to do those wellhead monitoring inspections. Now, previously, some of these inspections, someone will go to the well site, they fill in a checklist, and they return it to the client, and then the client needs to put that data in a database and manage it. And clients have a system for that, but we've had so much demand on clients trying to get recommendations on how to manage that data. So Western, I mean, internally, we've taken a big shift in how we manage our own assets, and we're using those systems to help manage our clients' assets, because not just putting together, previously, I talked about the downhole data and the well access data we get. Now we're looking also at the wellhead data and being able to tie all that information into one database, and using a risk-based approach to then advise clients how to extend the life of their assets is where Western's really providing value at the moment. I guess on the recruitment side, again, we're looking for more people within Western to take part in our wellhead asset management service line. It's something that we've got a lot of demand for, and we're actively recruiting at the moment. So the next thing that comes out of that, I've talked about, we get some downhole data and we advise that to the client. We're now getting wellhead and surface data and advising that to the client. And the next step that the client's been asking us is, okay, well, I need to organize it. I need to assess it. Like, what's the next step? And they have resources to do that. But like I said, they're focused on maybe a new power station or other value-added projects for their business. And they want to make those decisions, but they don't necessarily have time to put all that data together. So Western Energy is providing, at least in our engineering team, services for data gathering assessment, whether that's going through downhole data, camera surveys, whether that's modeling the wellbore and workover modeling to see what tools would be more appropriate to clean their well or abandon their well, doing risk-based calculations, making decision trees and cost-based decision trees for them to make those decisions, and then meeting them face-to-face to go through that data. And another part of asset management that ties in is also well decommissioning. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of suspended wells around the place, and often the ones that are left suspended are because they're tricky to abandon. And this has been one of my favorite projects actually at Western, because I guess these suspended assets stay on companies' balance sheets and hold up capital that could be otherwise used for other, or hold up provisions that could be used in other ways for the business. And that's because they're tricky and in difficult places. Like the pictures you can see there, these are all from close to Taupo. So there's a couple of wells there next to Placemakers, which is over in the Tauhara area. There was a well we abandoned just the other week that's on the Wairakei golf course. And then this one in the bottom, that was, the name of that well is WKM02. So it was the second well drilled in, second monitoring well drilled in Wairakei. So it's sort of 1960s is the age, but you can see all the infrastructure that's gone around. There's a big 24-inch pipeline on the side there. There's power lines above it. So getting conventional equipment in to abandon these assets has been difficult, and that's why they're left suspended. So Western took this as a challenge, and we've developed, used some of our existing equipment to help develop these without, I guess, the conventional approach to abandonments. We don't need to do lots of earthworks. Some of the, for shallow wells, often it's easy to bring a cement truck in if they're not too hot. But a lot of these suspended assets, they're left there because they're difficult. They're small cement volumes. The temperature's still hot, so you can't use conventional cements from just your average construction cement company. And so Western pioneered a kind of package. So we use this 3/4-inch tubing, and we use our Y-line unit, and we still use our conventional cement equipment. And this was us abandoning that well there, WKM02. Now, there've been multiple iterations of figuring out how to abandon this well. You can see there, so there's this big lagoon there on the side. So making earthworks to get a rig or even a larger coil tubing unit, and it was difficult. You had the power lines along there, the flow line as well. But we were able to find a way to put this 3/4 tubing on the Y-line unit implement a bottom hole assembly and still use our conventional cementing equipment to abandon that well. It was very successful, and now there's sort of, I think, about 7 of those shallow monitoring wells that are in difficult places that we've now abandoned using that method. So that's been a really successful part of asset management as well, because abandonment is part of that, and finally closing out that asset once it's no longer needed. And I think that's what I've got on asset management at the moment. That went a bit quicker than I thought. So we'll move into live well cleanouts. So live well cleanouts is sort of the tagline that we use for scale removal using a coiled tubing unit that we have. So traditionally, as I'm sure many of you are aware, geothermal wells develop scale, and traditionally maybe a rig would be used to remove that scale. So I've got that picture on the left there. It's a lot of equipment. You also have to quench the well, which means that you need to cool it down. You need to remove pipe work, and those thermal cycles, when you quench the well to cool it down, sort of fatigue the well, and there's only a limited cycles before some casing damage will occur. So clients push a lot to not have to quench their wells for these kind of workovers. I mean, I guess one option is the middle one there. You could use a slickline unit. You could use broaching. So that involves these kind of jagged tools that's like in the middle column of the pictures there to sort of chisel off the scale, and that's been effective. But in larger sizes, it doesn't seem to be as successful. The bit and scraper is going to clean more scale there. However, on the right hand side of the slide there, what LWC, which means live well clean out with coiled tubing, you get to keep the well live, but you still take advantage, I guess, of the bit to be able to clean the scale better. So I mentioned before, there's some advantages of having all that pipe connected on one continuous string, and that's that you can actually leave the well flowing. You don't need to quench it to be able to clean the scale. And also with the well flowing, that's providing transport of the scale. So when you clean it with a rig, unless you can get suitable flow, that scale might often fall to bottom, and the last step of the rig clean out might be to vertically discharge that well and blow all the scale out, and you might not get it out. But when that well is flowing a couple of 100 tons an hour and you're cleaning out that scale while it's flowing, all of that scale is being removed to surface. And I have some pictures later to show you what that looks like. So the techniques that Western's used to remove scale has been pioneered with Contact Energy, who's our owner. And the picture on the right there, that's live well clean out in Kawerau on a well that was scaled up. And you can see there, I talked about our production testing. So these two 40-foot containers here, that's a temporary silencer. So I'll jump into what I've got on the slide there shortly, but often the clients don't have on site a suitable silencer to be able to perform a live well clean out, but Western has these temporary silencer, and it's two 40-foot containers, very easily transportable, that we can actually bring to those sites without suitable silencers, so that we can clean that well and that scale doesn't end up in production pipework. So, like I said, with Contact Energy in Western since about 2016, I think we started doing clean outs with different motors and mills. And one of the, I think, a big alignment between Western and Contact is our drive for innovation and drive to make geothermal fuel cheaper, and giving us the confidence to fail and to try things, because there's not a lot of lab testing you can do for cleaning scale at 300 degrees C. So being able to have the confidence to go in and engineer a plan to clean scale, I mean, it's a real credit to Contact Energy that they partnered with Western to develop that. And it's interesting, definitely there was some learnings earlier on, but we've got to the point where this live well scale clean out with coiled tubing it's close to 100% successful. And we've got a 5-well campaign coming up, and we did a 4-well campaign for Contact, I think 2 years ago now. And that campaign took 2 weeks and brought back 8 megawatts of production. I mean, that's a huge gain to guess just from 2 weeks without drilling a well. In summary, I guess we've got 60 well cleanouts that we've done so far. We've done some works in the US and New Zealand. I've included, for those people more interested in technical detail, some of the well specifications there. I think we're kind of getting close to time, so I'll just quickly jump through the rest to show you why you might, for those people that like data, why would you use a live well cleanout? Well, if you use a rig and it takes sort of, weeks to get mobilized and rigged up and back and install pipelines, you're kind of looking on average at, and this data is from our customer, by the way, this is data from Western. It takes sort of 42 days to do a clean out with the rig, whereas with the live well clean out, you can do it between breakfast and dinner. You can turn up the day before, set up your equipment, 8 o'clock in the morning, the coiled tubing rig's in the well cleaning scale, and it's out of there by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and your well's still on full production. So that's a huge change in efficiency in planning and cleaning scale from wells. We've got a couple of case studies. I probably don't have time for them, so I'll just jump to those that like images better. And this is pictures of cooling channels that are filled with scale and a weir box that's full of scale from some of the live well cleanouts that we've done, so we can really show our customers that we're removing the scale from the well. That wraps up what I want to talk about today. So I guess to cut back, I talked about Western Energy, who we are, our staffing capabilities and services. I talked about asset management, talked about what we're doing in terms of downhole data, what we're doing in terms of wellhead asset management, risk assessment, and asset decommissioning or abandonment. And then I talked a bit about live well cleanouts and how they can really change your geothermal business and how they're driving down the cost of geothermal fuel. So I'm happy to take your questions, and thanks for attending.
Thank you so much, Ben, and thank you so much. This is very comprehensive, and especially learning how fascinating your 60 wells cleanup and gathering, and still learning as you go with each of the projects. So to the audience, if you have any questions, please type that into the chat box or use the reaction buttons and put your hand up. So Ben, while we are waiting for the questions to flow in, I have got 3 questions to ask you to know better about you. So, and this is my favorite part. Okay, so I understand that you're currently not in New Zealand because with the COVID and also other arrangements, but reflecting on the time that you spent in New Zealand, what is your favorite Kiwi food?
Oh, as an Australian, I mean, there's probably a bit of debate on who invented pavlova, but I think I do like the feijoa, actually. It's not a fruit that I came across much in Australia, although I have since seen it since coming back. But yeah, definitely I like that one.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay. So next one. So throughout our career, and I'm sure that you as well, that you have met senior managers, colleagues, or mentors that might have some influence in your career. Is that one key message that stuck in your mind when during those conversations with them, and then you're going, wow, this is something that I've never thought of? Any key questions or key moments that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I think the office desk is sometimes a small place to see the world. It's very important. I mean, I started my, I guess, career in oil and gas and in a field-based position, very hands-on and outside in all different places. And hands-on experience is something that's really important, even after people maybe finish in their, say, field days, if you want to call it that. It's so important to still go out to the steam field or to where these services are actually being delivered and see what's going on and get that perspective of what's happening on the ground.
Thank you. Very interesting. Yeah. Okay. So last question, because we have got more questions on the panel. So I know that you're also a very active person and love the outdoors. If you
Yeah.
were in the New Zealand Olympic team, which sport will you be competing?
Oh, how difficult. I think decathlon. I mean, you get to compete in 10 different events. That'd be quite amazing.
Okay, that sure.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
There's someone that likes to be a bit of an all-rounder. I think, yeah, decathlon would be incredible.
Wow. Thank you. That is so cool. Okay, so we have got a number of questions on the panel. So I'm just going to read them out. So question from Mike. For your international work, do you need to ship your own equipment or can you rent locally?
So the quick answer is both. We've had inquiries for both options, that operators would like us to bring our own equipment and others that they'd like for us to engage local subcontractors, or sometimes the operators have their own equipment. So I guess yes is the answer to the question. And
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, so another question from our international visitor. So Farid, are you using a mud motor on the CT? What fluid drives the motor?
Yeah, that's correct. So for the live well cleanouts, we sometimes use percussive tools that use nitrogen gas, but to answer your specific question, with the mud motor, we use water. So we just pump water on a drilling rig, use mud, but we just pump fresh water down. Does that answer the question?
Okay, right here. So we're going to the next question from Neil. Are Western looking at cementing of new wells?
So yes, at some stage. I think at the moment, one thing I didn't talk about in relation to abandonments is that Western, we actually have a cement lab, and that's up at the Tamihi Power Station. So through our partnership with Contact, we have a space for that. So our immediate interest is more in the lab testing of cement, but yeah, happy to consider any opportunities for cementing of new wells.
Okay, but that wasn't described in your presentation.
No, I kind of missed that. That's actually that's only happened, I think 2020 we started the lab. So because we did so much of the abandonment planning, and like I'd mentioned prior to that, a lot of the lab testing, and we get a recipe from our customer that says mix this cement, and traditionally Western will go to the well site and deliver what we've been asked, but then we got this request of, look, we need you to abandon the well. So then we needed to develop those recipes ourselves. So we went and bought a cement lab, and now we have quite a lot of capability around testing cements, and a lot of experience in geothermal cementing and geothermal cement lab testing also.
Okay, so Neil, does that answer your question?
I'm not sure. I hope so. If not, just get in touch, Neil. And
hang on. I'll try that now. Yeah, that's answered the question. I wondered where the cement testing was done, because I've been tired for a number of years now, but I've been asked to revisit the cement formulations and the use of different kinds of silica, which I did I started that work in the 80s, and it continued on for quite a number of years. But I just wondered whether there was any cement testing facilities available, and you've just answered my question. There is somebody now that can do that.
Yeah, definitely. That's it. We have a lab at the Tamihi Power Station in Taupo.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I've done quite a bit of work with Stuart Lee at some stage. So yeah.
Okay, so if there are any further correspondence, I'm sure that you two will be able to connect to each other.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't have any more questions at this stage, but if you do, please type them in or put your hand up. So, okay, so On behalf of the Geothermal Association, thank you, Ben. Thank you for your support today. This is such a wonderful time just to learn more about Western, and also to see that the company is supporting the geothermal sector, and also the engineering capability that you have got in your company is very fascinating. And also thank you so much for being the corporate member, and we really want to help you to increase your profile, and hence the webinars here is one of the vehicles to do that. So thank you so much. So,
thanks.
So before we come to the close, just a little bit of what is coming up in your next month. So same webinar, same format. I have already aligned Mitch from Pink and White Gin. Sorry, this is not an in-person meeting. Otherwise, we can have tastings. So in April, our next webinar, we will have Mitch to talk about his project, his story, and what the company is planning to do in the short and medium term. So we'll send out more information to you through our newsletter and also on our social media. So thank you, Ben, today. And also thank you for you dialing in from New Zealand, from Aotearoa, and also from our other locations. So on behalf of the association, thank you so much, and good night, and also good afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, Kenny. Bye.